Josh, bienvenue.
Thank you, Mark. Nice
Welcome
to see
Paris.
you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
You're here for a very special reason this year.
Yes.
We're presenting a Lifetime Achievement Award. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you feel about it? How's it been?
Well, hopefully it's not the end of a lifetime. It's just the beginning. It's very, well, first of all, thank you. I'm very excited that you thought of me. It's been a wonderful, wonderful career. I've been doing this for about 16 years and never would have dreamed that this is where I would end up with my career at this point.
Yeah, and it's a high note this year. The Burson Report, everyone's raving about it. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Well, you know, the HR tech space is going through this huge shift away from HR tech, actually, towards people stuff. So I think the reason that there's so much disruption and so much change is people don't want HR software anymore. They want software that makes their life better, that makes their work better, that makes them more productive, that gives them more time. And most of the HR technologies that have been out there for the last 15 years weren't designed for that. They were designed for forms and process management and, you know, capturing data about people, which is changing. So there's a lot of change going on. Plus, of course, you know, I mean, mobile technology and the way we use these devices and sensors and robotics and AI is infiltrating HR technology too. So that's going to totally change the market also.
It is. And what's exciting you the most out there at the moment with all the research you've been doing this year?
I would say the big excitement to me is that the new tools, many of which are coming from small companies, and I think a lot of the big, very successful ERP companies are going to be pinched by this, are sort of as easy to use as Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I mean, there are those kinds of systems. Yeah. And they're doing HR things. They're giving you feedback. They're letting you set goals. They're showing you what other people on your team are doing. They're giving you opportunities to submit surveys and collect data on people. There's an emergence of apps for wellness and well-being and mindfulness and all those things that really matter to us as people are becoming part of HR technology. So I think the conference is going to be very, very different over the next couple of years as those kinds of things.
The vendor landscape's going to change enormously, isn't it? And then you've got the other companies out there as well, like the Microsofts and the Googles and the Facebooks and stuff like that. Google at Work and Facebook at Work.
Well, you know, Facebook at Work, which they renamed to Workplace, which we've been using inside of Deloitte, is actually really cool. Because, and the way I look at it is Facebook spent, I don't know, 8 or 10 years mastering the way people communicate online without any training, right? Nobody has to really learn how to use Facebook. So now you have a tool like that at work to communicate with work teams. You know, Workday announced a spreadsheet. I don't know if you noticed, Workday announced a spreadsheet product.
Yeah, we saw that.
It's positioned as a planning tool, but it's really a spreadsheet. So it's really a productivity tool. Obviously, Google is clearly in the productivity market. Microsoft's new stuff is really exciting. Microsoft now has tools built into Outlook that monitor how much time you're spending in meetings, how much time you're spending with customers to make you more productive. So this has become, all the big guys are in this space.
Microsoft, you see things like Skype, and there's been a few social collaborative companies that they've bought over the years as well. Email, we were talking about that earlier. I'm a Slacker, my team is a Slacker. We have, it's the ultimate communication tool in our office. We don't use it as project management and stuff like that. But if you're not a technologist, there's a lot of fun to it, which I've never experienced before. Integrating other softwares, calendars, all sorts of different things, even time and attendance, is not painful. It's easy.
Right.
So,
well, that's what I think a lot of this HR technology needs to do, is it needs to be embedded into Slack or email or Facebook, so you use it in the system that you're already using, as opposed to leaving the productivity system and going to the HR system and coming back, which no one really has time to do anymore. So that's where I think this is all going to go.
I see Salesforce are having a bit of fun with that. I was over at Dreamforce 2 weeks ago. That was quite fun.
Yeah.
You live in a cool part of the world.
Well, and I live in Oakland, so I live in the coolest city in the Bay Area.
Tell us about that. Is it really the dream?
Oakland, when I moved to Oakland, it was nothing. There was nobody there.
Yeah.
And now it is as hot as San Francisco. Uber's building a building in Oakland. Pandora's in Oakland. Google apparently is moving a bunch of people to Oakland. So San Francisco's gotten so expensive, people can't afford to live there. So they've moved to the East Bay.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, just a block of space.
Yeah.
It's got a lot going on in there, and some of the most inspiring, fastest growing startups are kind of all in this area. And you've not got to go too far away to get to kind of NASA Research Park and Silicon Valley and all these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
The only problem with the Bay Area is the traffic.
Yeah.
So until we have autonomous vehicles, I don't know how people are going to get around.
Yeah. And tell us a bit about that. The future of work. What's what's motivating you now? We call 16 years a lifetime, and hopefully, it's not. It's definitely not the end. Next few years, what's exciting you the most?
Well, I've been. Let's see, I graduated from college in '78. So I actually entered the workforce before there was email. So I've seen a lot of technology come. And the type of technology that's entering the workforce now with AI and analytics and predictive tools is very revolutionary. And if you look at the data, and economists have studied this, on the jobs that are going away, in this era of technology, roles like sales positions, managerial positions, Deloitte is concerned about the accounting profession, lawyers, doctors, a lot of roles which we used to consider protected professions with degrees or accreditations are now being automated by software. More and more of them are being, now they're more augmented reality. We're not actually going to do away with all those jobs, but people will be using tools. It's like when the spreadsheet was first introduced in the 1980s, people were afraid that the financial analyst role would go away. But actually the financial analyst role got bigger because now they could use a spreadsheet. So all of these jobs are becoming augmented by technology. But what is happening, which is a stress, is people that are not comfortable with the technology, people that are not willing to adapt, people that are not willing to relearn their profession in a new way will be left behind. And that's where I think a lot of the stress is. And if you look at the data on the future of work, and the Oxford study is kind of the most famous one, but roughly half the jobs we have today will not exist in 20 years. They'll be different. There'll be other jobs, and so if you're not re-educating yourself and familiarizing yourself with all of these new tools, you're going to be one of the people that's left behind, and that's what's, I think, really bothering people right now.
Is it on people to manage this themselves, Josh?
No, I think it's three things. We as individuals have to just face the fact that we're going to have to constantly reinvent ourselves, and that goes for people like me too, all of us. Companies have to really push to develop reskilling programs, education programs, mobility programs to move people from role to role, and hire people based on potential, not just based on skill. If you hire somebody because they know how to do X, and 12 months to 2 years later, we don't need X anymore, maybe that person wasn't the right person. So there's a different way of hiring people. And then the third area is really public policy. And I think one of the reasons we have such a tumultuous debate in the United States right now, obviously we had the Brexit, is because public policymakers have to deal with this also and provide the education and training so people can adapt to these new jobs. Because I don't think technology is going to slow down at all.
No, we were talking about the convergence of exponential technology. So it's like that. That's why I feel no one's able to put a timeline on it. Eh? It's a bit of a guess, no matter how much research you're looking at. But we were talking about it earlier with Jason and Naomi. We were talking about, I would think FedEx was used as the example because driverless trucks, driverless cars, the drones delivering all the packages, it just kills all those jobs. It does the same for the postal worker as well. So it's pretty much every industry that's out there, Josh.
Every industry, but the one thing I would say about it that I think is a little bit overblown by the press is things happen a little slower than they seem. So yes, you could fly drones to deliver packages. Yes, you could go to a Starbucks and get your coffee delivered by a robot. But actually, people like the human touch. So the example I'd like to give is the automatic teller machine. In the 1980s and 1990s, the ATM was sort of invented. and people are predicting the end of branch banking and the end of the teller. Actually, there are almost 3 or 4 times as many branch banks now as there were before the ATM, and there's about 10% more tellers. But what they're doing is more human sales and service and jobs that ATMs can't do. So I think the technology impacts all of us, but it creates opportunities for more human work around the technology. So I think one of the things that employers have to do is really rethink their product and their service and add the human touch. When you fly in an airplane, most of what the pilot does is automated. I mean, I have a feeling, I don't know this for a fact, I have a feeling the pilot's sitting up there, reading the paper or chilling out for a lot of the flight. The flight attendants are very busy. The flight attendants are the ones you remember at the end of the flight. So airlines need to think about the human part of their product and service and how important that is to their customers while the technology is augmenting some of these more professional roles.
I think there's planes out there already that are doing that. I was on a plane a few years ago where there was an announcement made that it was a machine that landed the plane. So, I think
I'm sure it's happening all the time.
But I think in France, you definitely know when Air France is landing down, and there's a human at the front of that plane landing it. So,
yeah,
cool. Okay, with all the jobless marketplace that's out there, Josh, the idea, some of the tweets that come out today when I've published this video with Vivek, for example, there's words like catastrophic and the timelines are wrong and stuff like that. But another recession, another few bubbles and stuff like that. The governments don't seem to be organised around this. The big holes that we're suffering in the UK because of Brexit and stuff like that. And I've been over to the US enough times now to know that the homeless problem is getting worse and worse every time I go back. So there's this, I think the people I'm talking to are definitely talking about education. My thing with HR as well, I've seen a lot of people come through HR where they haven't gotten the degree they were kind of shooting for, so they kind of looked at organizational psychology as a kind of nice place to go in.
Yeah.
I think like doctors that can't deal with humans shouldn't be allowed to be doctors. I think the same for HR. The best HR people I find don't come from HR backgrounds, or they don't have all these certified what is it called, all the points that they get from associations and stuff like that. They tend to come from operations backgrounds or kind of very business, financial backgrounds, where they've had to build teams, they've had to get their hands really dirty with the business. Whereas, see a lot of HR people go into the job, they don't have to go through that same pain. Nick Colley often comments about, the idea of solutions looking for problems that don't exist in the business.
Yeah. No, I think there is in the HR profession, there is a wringing out of the administrative sort of maybe non-business oriented HR professionals more every year. I mean, those jobs were important in the early days before we had a lot of technology and a lot of analytics and a lot of tools. There are fewer and fewer of those jobs needed in HR. And so if you're an HR administrator and you're not really familiar with the business and you don't know how your company makes money and you can't serve as a consultant, your window is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and those are the jobs that companies are transforming away. We go through, at Deloitte, we do all these massive HR transformations all the time. And the first thing that always happens is how do we reduce the number of generalists and create more senior business partners? Every single company is going through that. But I think on your other...
Deloitte have been famous for that though as well, for calling out HR as well, no? It's kind of like the end of HR.
Well, no, I don't think, I don't feel that way. I think HR, we're stuck with the name, whether we like it or not, whether we want to call it people operations or something else, is a very critical part of a business. Because most business guys, and you know this, you've got to make the numbers, you've got to hire people, you've got to figure out what products to build, you've got to take care of customers. The people stuff gets done in between. And so the HR, if it's a good HR function, they're going to professionalize all the people practices around that so that you can attract young people and take care of all the exciting innovation that people want to do in a meaningful way, and also measure the data about people. HR has really become a very data-driven part of business now. We have lots of data about people we can use to predict who's going to be successful and who's not, and that's becoming very big.
Do you see the HR people really managing it well? You know, we were talking about big data for HR 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, when I ask my clients now where they kind of rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, there's not many kind of move beyond 1 or 2, if they're being honest.
You know, it's
they're
slow.
kind of lazy. They're looking for the off-the-shelf product kind of thing.
Right.
Well, I don't think it's ever going to be off the shelf. I mean, I think it's going to require some custom work. It is evolving. I mean, I'm actually going to a meeting right after this with a big insurance company, and we're going to be talking about analytics for an entire day. It's slow, but it is progressing. Our research, we've been looking at research on the adoption of analytics in HR, I don't know, geez, for 10 years. And it is ticking up very steadily. So there is a lot of effort going on.
Are you seeing any cool stuff out there?
I'll tell you one thing I was just reading on my way over here is, you know, video interviewing is really big, and there's lots of companies that have video interview tools. There's now software that can watch a video and determine if you're telling the truth. And determine if you're angry, and in fact, it's being used on the presidential debates in the United States.
Right.
Funny articles about it. So that's analytics.
Yeah.
Now it's tricky what you do with that data, and it's very risky if you abuse it. But that kind of data is available now to companies more or less off the shelf. So there's lots of examples like that out there.
That's fairly doomsday.
Well, we did, and here's another one. Deloitte Canada had people wear smart badges, a pilot group, and they listen to their voice, and they determine when they're under stress and where they are and who they're near, and it has GPS in it. And they determined that they needed bigger conference rooms, that they needed more light, that they needed to rearrange the offices. They came with all sorts of recommendations on how to optimize the business better as a result of the data that came back from those human interactions and human voices.
Yeah.
So there's some pretty cool stuff out there.
Brilliant. Lifetime Achievement Award. How did you fall into HR? 16 years, you know the number exactly. 16 is a magic number, like, so.
Well, it was a complete accident. I mean, I was in sales and product and technology and marketing, and I was part of a startup that we sold, and I worked in the online learning industry, and then I was laid off in 2001, actually, right around 9/11. And lived in the Bay Area, and I knew a lot of people in the training industry because I'd worked in the training industry for a couple of years. And I went out and I found some work writing for an analyst firm, actually doing research. And it turns out in my academic career, I had studied English. I was an engineer in college, but I studied English first, so I always liked to write. So it turned out something I was good at, and that was in 2001. And so I did this little project, and did some writing and built a little website up, and that basically became this. Completely by accident.
When did you really feel like you're onto something?
Well, about a year after I was laid off, a friend of mine was laid off who came to join me, and I remember we were doing kind of anything that anybody would pay us to do, and we were writing case studies for a vendor, actually, about their clients. And I remember he came up to me once and he said, I think we could make money selling research. And I was like, okay, maybe. What should we study? Let's study training, since it's something we know about. So that's kind of was the beginning of it. And we started in training, and our first website was called elearningresearch.com, because it was about e-learning at the time. And then we did a lot of work with clients and companies on their training strategies, and they started to ask us for help on leadership development. And originally I thought, well, leadership development is just another part of training. And we found out, no, it's actually not. It's very different. It's got assessment and succession management and all these other things. And I remember saying to Chris, we're never going to get into HR. We're going to stay in training because HR is too boring. But sure enough, people were asking for more and more. So we did research on talent management, and then we got into the technology work, because we're also an analyst firm. And since I worked in technology, for really 20 years before I did this, that came to me. So that's kind of how it got started. It was 2 or 3 years of just random. You know what it's like.
I know it's like it's funny when it's funny when you say
random
it.
for a while.
It is totally random. Yeah, and you find these things out. I don't know if you found this out. Well, of course you did. I find the HR people and the recruiters a very different bunch of people. You know, the recruiters obviously.
The recruiters are salespeople.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Yep, the recruiters are different.
Got, like in our space, like we've got the enjoyment of all those kind of personalities,
Right.
and of course we've got the countries and cultures to match as well. But you've got the geeks, and yeah, so you've got that mad mix.
Well,
of people.
there's recruiters that are like salespeople. There's IO psychologists that are like mathematicians. Then there's general HR people that are very, very people oriented. The L&D professionals are mostly frustrated teachers. So there's different personalities in the HR profession that are very interesting. The way
it's a mad mix. And you know, this madness that's out there, you know, what are your thoughts like in, you know, over the next few years? How should we organize ourselves to kind of really get behind what we see, what, you know, some of our fears of what's happening out there in terms of automation?
Well, I think we in HR are going to be disrupted just like everybody else. We have to become better at data. We have to become better at digital experimenting, hackathons, trying new things. We have to be comfortable with technology, making decisions and recommending things to us that we may have thought we could do ourselves. We have to practice design thinking. One of the things that really I think has changed about HR was most of the L&D people that I've worked with over the years, and most of the HR stuff, was a process design. We would sit around for a day or two with a bunch of whiteboards and let's design this process and let's harmonize the process and figure out all the steps, and then we'll roll it out and we'll train people and we'll try to get them to do it. And they don't do it. They're too busy. They got too many emails or whatever. Yeah. So now this whole idea of process design has been replaced with something called design thinking. So HR people actually have to be designers. They have to understand what makes people tick and why they will or won't do something, and understand behavioral economics. So if you're not willing to reinvent yourself and learn all these new domains in HR, you're gonna be left behind too. So we have plenty of disruption going on in this profession.
Cool. And what advice would you give to, you know, again, Lifetime Achievement Award, people coming into the profession? What little bit of advice would you give to them?
I think this is a fascinating, wonderful career for anyone. I mean, because it's a combination of people and business and technology all together. You get to really touch all those things at the same time. You can have tremendous value in an organization if you work at it and you work as a consultant. I meet a lot of young HR professionals out in California where I live, and they are filled with brilliant ideas and creative. I think we also have to throw away some of the old stuff, you know,
Yeah.
Throw away all those old books, just don't even read them. Or maybe read them so you know a little bit about the thinking in the past. But the way we manage people in businesses today is very, very different. What motivates people, the way we're organized, the way we operate, the way we have these sort of digital business processes are different. And so we need young people in the HR profession. So I would encourage anybody that's interested to jump into it.
Yeah, and you love the startup space. You've been a judge and helped us out with the Disrupt HR over the years. You know, it's an exciting space for us. They've got that ambition and hunger, and you know, you can't even knock them down. They want to change the world. So we need to inspire those guys as well.
Absolutely, and you know, and even though there's some giant vendors in the space, every one of these startups has the opportunity to become a billion-dollar company. It is such a big market. I mean, the way I look at it is every business in the world needs HR. And there's millions of companies that need HR people, and they all need tools. So if you've got a great idea and you can, you know, get it to the point where people will buy it and use it, I'd say go for it, because there's always room for new ideas and new technologies.
Cool. Josh, absolute pleasure again.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your award.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.